Summer is supposed to be a time for freedom, adventure, and memories you'll never forget. But for some people, those memories turn into nightmares they wish they could erase. The stories you're about to hear are not campfire tales or urban legends. They happen to real people in real places during what should have been ordinary summer vacations. Each one begins with a sense of fun and escape, and each one ends with something far darker. These are 3 chilling true stories of summer vacations gone horribly wrong. This happened about 4 summers ago during a family trip to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I was 20 at the time, home from college, and the trip was supposed to be a simple, relaxing week at the beach. My parents had rented this big vacation house right on the dunes, the kind of place with wooden stairways leading straight down to the sand and a wraparound porch, where you could watch the sunrise. It wasn't just my parents and me. My younger sister, my cousin, and his girlfriend all came along too. The house was huge, so it felt more like a small retreat than a family vacation. During the day, it was everything you'd want from a summer getaway: swimming, grilling, fishing, and staying up late on the deck with cold drinks while the ocean roared just a few hundred feet away. But the first night, something happened that completely shattered that whole easygoing vibe. I was the last one awake, sitting out on the porch sometime after midnight. I've always been a night owl, and it was one of those rare moments where everything was completely still. The waves were crashing in the distance, but otherwise it was just the faint hum of insects and the occasional creak of the wooden deck beneath me. I remember leaning back in my chair, scrolling on my phone, when I heard footsteps. At first, I thought it was just someone else in the house coming out to join me, but the sound wasn't coming from inside. It was coming from below, from the stairs that led directly to the beach. That immediately put me on edge because those stairs didn't connect to a public walkway. They were attached only to our house. The only reason someone would be coming up those steps would be if they had walked across the sand in the dark and deliberately climbed toward us. I set my phone down and just listened. The footsteps weren't hurried or hesitant. They were steady, like whoever it was felt completely comfortable being there. I leaned forward, trying to see down over the railing, but it was too dark to make anything out. All I could hear was the faint sound of wood groaning under weight as the person slowly climbed. That's when I finally whispered, "Hello?" The footsteps stopped, dead silent. For a moment, I thought maybe I had just imagined it. Maybe the sound had been the house settling or some weird echo of the waves. But then I heard a low exhale, like someone trying not to breathe too loudly. That was enough for me. I stood up quickly and went back inside, locking the sliding glass door behind me. I didn't wake anyone up right away. I just stood there in the kitchen staring at the deck, waiting to see if whoever it was would step into view. But they never did. After a while, I convinced myself I was just paranoid and finally went to bed. The next morning, though, I knew I hadn't imagined it. When I walked down to the beach, I saw the footprints. They weren't ours. Everyone else had been asleep by midnight, and these prints were fresh, leading straight up to our staircase from the open sand. I told my parents about what I'd heard, and my dad brushed it off as probably just a drunk tourist wandering around. But I could tell even he was a little uneasy when he saw the footprints himself. We moved on with the day, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I stayed up again, partly because I couldn't sleep, partly because I wanted to know if it would happen again. And sure enough, sometime around 1 in the morning, I heard the same sound, footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming up the stairs. This time, I didn't wait around. I woke my dad and cousin, and the 3 of us went out onto the deck together. The second we opened the door, the footsteps stopped. We looked over the railing, but the stairs were empty. My dad shined a flashlight down toward the sand, and for a split second, I swear I saw a man duck out of the beam and disappear into the darkness. We called out, but there was no response. Just the waves again, steady and endless. My dad wanted to go down and check the beach, but my cousin and I both convinced him not to. Whoever it was clearly knew how to move quickly and quietly in the dark, and the last thing we wanted was to chase after some stranger barefoot on an empty stretch of beach. The next day, we found more footprints. Not just at the base of the stairs this time, but circling the house, like whoever it was had been walking around in the middle of the night checking the doors and windows. That was when my mom demanded we call the rental company. They said they'd send someone to check it out, but there wasn't much else they could do. The house didn't have security cameras, and the nearest police station was almost half an hour away. We spent the rest of the trip on edge. At night, no one wanted to sit outside anymore, and we started keeping the lights on in the house just in case. The strangest part? The night after we made that call, the footsteps stopped completely. Not a sound. No new footprints in the sand. Whoever it was seemed to vanish. I still don't know who it was. Maybe it really was just a drunk local, or maybe someone targeting vacation homes looking for an easy break-in. But the way they moved, the way they stopped breathing, when they realized I'd noticed them, it felt so much more intentional than that. I've been on a lot of family vacations since, but I've never been able to shake that memory. The sound of slow, steady footsteps coming up from the darkness, and the sick realization that someone had chosen our house to approach, knowing we were all inside. Even now, whenever I'm at the beach, I find myself glancing at the stairs at night, listening for that sound. Because the worst part is that they never tried to break in. Whoever it was didn't want the house. They wanted to watch. This story happened to me in 2019, when I went on a trip to the Smoky Mountains with a group of friends. There were 5 of us, me, my best friend Luke, his girlfriend at the time, and 2 other guys we knew from college. We had rented a cabin deep in the woods, the kind of place where the road turns from pavement to gravel and you don't see another house for miles. It was the kind of setting that was perfect for a summer getaway. We had beer, food, and enough firewood to last the week. The first day was exactly what you'd expect. Hiking, swimming in the river, grilling burgers. That night, we made a campfire outside the cabin and stayed up late talking until the woods grew pitch black around us. Everything seemed perfect, but the second night changed everything. We were sitting around the fire again, and at some point after midnight, we all started to notice noises out in the trees. At first, it was just faint rustling like small animals moving around, but it kept happening. Over and over, always just outside the reach of the firelight. Eventually, Luke tossed a stick into the dark and yelled, "Get out of here!" thinking it was a raccoon. But what we heard after wasn't the sound of something small scattering away. It was a low, heavy crunch of footsteps. Human footsteps. We all went quiet. The sound moved slowly, deliberately, like someone circling the fire from just beyond where we could see. Every time one of us pointed a flashlight, the noise would stop, only to start again a few seconds later from a different direction. At one point, I swore I saw a figure standing between the trees, a tall, pale outline, but when I blinked and looked again, it was gone. Eventually, we decided to put the fire out and head inside the cabin. None of us said it out loud, but we all felt safer behind a locked door. Inside, the mood shifted from uneasy laughter to total silence. We sat in the living room with just the dim cabin lights on, waiting to hear if the noises would follow. And sure enough, not even 10 minutes later, there was a slow knock on one of the windows. It wasn't loud, it wasn't frantic. Just 3 steady taps. We froze, nobody wanted to move. Then it happened again on the other side of the cabin, another set of taps, just as slow, just as deliberate. Luke grabbed the fireplace poker and told everyone to stay inside while he checked. He turned on the porch light and stepped out onto the deck, but there was nothing. Just the quiet forest. The rest of us crowded by the window, watching nervously until Luke finally came back in, shaking his head. "Nothing out there," he said. But none of us really believed him. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I kept waking up, listening to the creaks and groans of the cabin. At around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps on the porch outside. They were heavy, slow, and unmistakable. I sat up in bed, holding my breath as they moved across the deck and stopped right outside my window. I didn't dare look. I just stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, until the steps eventually faded away. The next morning, Luke went outside to check, and he found something that made my stomach drop. In the dirt just below the cabin steps, there were footprints, bare footprints, larger than any of ours. We didn't talk much about it, but the mood of the trip completely changed after that. We stopped hanging out by the fire at night and started keeping the blinds closed. Every night we heard movement outside, sometimes footsteps, sometimes faint whispers we couldn't quite make out. On our last night there, just before dawn, I woke up to the sound of something scratching at the cabin door. Not pounding, not trying to force it open, just slow, steady scratches like nails dragging down wood. I wanted to wake the others, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Eventually, the sound stopped. When the sun came up, I checked the door, and sure enough, there were fresh marks carved into it. Long, jagged scratches that hadn't been there before. We packed up and left that morning without saying a word about what had happened. I don't know who or what was out there in those woods, circling us night after night. But I know this, whatever it wasn't just passing through. It wanted us to know it was there, and it wanted us afraid. This story took place in the summer of 2017 when I was on a road trip with my cousin. We were both 19 at the time, driving from our hometown in Illinois down to Florida. The plan was to camp along the way to save money. It sounded like the perfect summer adventure: long drives, cheap campsites, and nothing but freedom. But one night in Georgia turned that trip into something I'll never forget. We had been driving all day and didn't make it to the campground we'd planned on. By the time it got dark, we were exhausted and just wanted to crash somewhere. My cousin found a small family campground on Google Maps about 30 minutes off the highway. The reviews were sparse, but it looked open, so we decided to try it. When we pulled in, the place was practically deserted. There were only a couple of RVs parked way in the back, no tents, no lights, no signs of staff. The office building looked closed, but the gate was open, so we figured we'd just set up and pay in the morning. We found a spot near some trees, pitched the tent, and tried to relax. But right from the start, something felt wrong. The air was too quiet. No bugs, no frogs, no night sounds at all. Just silence. We stayed up for a little while, joking around, but eventually crawled into our sleeping bags. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember was waking up to the sound of crunching gravel. At first, I thought it was my cousin getting up to use the bathroom. But when I looked over, he was still in his bag, fast asleep. The footsteps grew louder, slow, heavy, circling our tent. I froze. Whoever it was, they weren't trying to be quiet. They wanted us to know they were there. I reached over and shook my cousin awake, whispering that someone was outside. We both sat in silence, listening. The steps would stop for a few seconds, then start again from a different side of the tent. It was like they were walking in slow circles around us. At one point, a shadow passed over the thin fabric wall, tall and distinctly human. My cousin hissed, "What do we do?" But I had no answer. Finally, I unzipped the tent just an inch and peeked out with my phone flashlight. That's when I saw him. A man, standing just a few feet away, staring right at the tent. He was barefoot, wearing what looked like torn jeans, and his hair was long and matted. His skin looked pale in the beam of my light, but what got me most were his eyes. He didn't even flinch when the light hit him. He just stared like he'd been waiting for me to look. I yanked the zipper shut and whispered to my cousin, "There's a guy out there." Summer is supposed to be a time for freedom, adventure, and memories you'll never forget. But for some people, those memories turn into nightmares they wish they could erase. The stories you're about to hear are not campfire tales or urban legends. They happen to real people in real places during what should have been ordinary summer vacations. Each one begins with a sense of fun and escape, and each one ends with something far darker. These are 3 chilling true stories of summer vacations gone horribly wrong. Vacations are meant to be a break from reality, but sometimes reality doesn't let you escape so easily. From unsettling strangers to places that hold secrets you're not supposed to uncover. Danger doesn't always hide in the shadows, it can be waiting right in the middle of your getaway. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe for more true horror like this, and let me know in the comments which story unsettled you the most. And remember, the next time you're planning that perfect summer trip, pay attention to your surroundings. Because sometimes the scariest places are the ones that seem the most ordinary. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye.